Welcome to the Channel 19 Experience Trucker Podcast. I'm your host, Tony, and welcome to the show. It is March 9th, and it is also episode number 4. Once again, this week, I had a really amazing amount of communication from people listening to the podcast, especially with me feeling under the weather, dealing with this kidney stone. Thanks for all the well wishes. I love you all for that. It really meant a lot. This week on the podcast, we're going to revisit my prickly visitor from this week and talk a little bit about my first kidney stone. We're also going to have a little geography quiz and solve the mystery of Fick, Indiana. We'll talk about diesel in the desert, a little Batman story, and also talk about broken hearts. This week we've got one guest, Gary from down in Florida joins us. I'll say a quick word about this episode's sponsor, kick off the jingle, and we'll get going with our pre-trip inspection. During the jingle is a great time to like, follow, subscribe, download, and share the podcast with your friends. If you're not driving, check out our website, channel19experience.com. So get that seat adjusted, set the cruise, and let's knock out some miles. We've got work to do. Trans-Carolina Permits is based out of North Carolina. The company's been in business since 1977. They've got a team with a ton of experience in all of our favorite part of trucking, which is the government. They provide a portfolio of services for the trucking industry, various applications and permits, FMCSA, Authority 2290s, IRP tags, DMV tags, trailer plates, state filings for your business, overdimensional permits, not to mention they have a compliance program. They'll help you with clearinghouse setup and queries, IFTA and mileage reporting, so your state-by-state mileage, your fuel purchase tracking, and get that wrapped up into a nice little bundle for quarterly filings. They're a one-stop shop for your trucking needs. You can find them on Facebook and LinkedIn, or check out their website, www.transcarolinapermits.com, or give them a call at 1-800-899-4870.
Paper breaker one time, can I get a radio check? Heard it pretty quiet out here on Channel 19. Well, there's a plain white rapper taking pictures at the state line. Hit the jake brake quick, we ain't paying no fines. The driver swing into the interstate, body shop south at exit 5. Building trucking ain't the same as it was. We're the last of our kind.
All right, time to start the pre-trip inspection. I'll start off with this. One thing I didn't realize, but I found out this week, was that the whole podcast distribution system doesn't happen as fast as I thought. I drop an episode on Podbean on Sunday night or Monday morning, and it doesn't show up quickly everywhere. Apple, Spotify, YouTube happen pretty fast, like within 30 minutes. But some weren't happening until Tuesday or Wednesday. Like iHeartRadio wasn't until Wednesday, same with Pocket Cast, so apologies for that. I'll see what I can do to speed that up so you don't have to wait around for the next episode. In the meantime, if you follow us on Facebook, I post on Facebook right after I drop the episode on Podbean, so then you'll get notified immediately and get a chance to get your week started a little earlier with the podcast. We'll kick things off with Diesel in the Desert over in Chandler, Arizona this weekend. My wife and I went over there, and where do I even begin with this? It's quite an event, quite a spectacle. I'll start with the people. There was a huge crowd, and there were great people all around. Really a ton of fun to be had by all ages. There was a ton of kids, a bunch of young people, which was awesome to see. We only ended up going on Saturday instead of both days. Friday, we had a lot of rain down here in the valley, which pushed back a lot of events from Friday night into Saturday. They still had some events on Friday night once the rain cleared up. Of course, they couldn't do drag racing on a wet track, but they were able to do the lights show with all the show trucks there. They had awesome trucks from all eras, 50s, 60s, all the way up through modern trucks. Really a ton of amazing work done on those vehicles with the restoration work and the upkeep, and just amazing conditions of these vehicles from here in the valley, across Arizona, New Mexico, California, Idaho. I saw trucks from all over the place. So it's really great to see those vehicles. Take a little turn back in time and see what the insides of those trucks look like that I've never been in, and also think about what some of those lives were like putting on miles in those vehicles in those eras. We also had a great time talking with a ton of the vendors. They've got multiple vendor rows set up, anywhere from things with trucking gear, trucking equipment, fuel filtration systems, clutches, turbos, you name it. Really a bunch of cool stuff. Lots of great vendors. A bunch of them were local in the valley, which is really nice to see and get to talk to them. We'll get some of those folks on the podcast here soon, talk a little bit about some of their technologies. And there's definitely some cool technologies I saw there that we'd like to give a spin. Isn't that right, little brother trucker? We're going to give some of them a spin, see what some of these supercharged technologies can do for us. The drag racing was a ton of fun. Got to watch a bunch of trucks, all sizes. You know, anything with a diesel engine was fair game. So we had anything from souped up, I think it was a 1970s Chevelle with a diesel engine, to modern BMWs with diesel engines. We had a whole bunch of pickup trucks, of course, semi trucks. We had a drag racer. I forget what they're called, but like the ones with the really long hood and the really big wheels in the back, the top fuel type racers. I think that's what they're called, but you can see some real speed going down the track in a really short amount of time with a lot of noise. Ton of fun, really good crowd. You packed the joint out, and I've got some videos up on Facebook, so check those out. Evidently, I'm not too bright at how to operate an iPhone, so some of my videos I pressed what I thought was start, but it was the end. So they didn't all turn out the way I thought they would, but there's some cool ones up there. Anyway, if someone would like to sponsor a Channel 19 Experience drag truck, we are definitely willing to put in sweat equity and do some gear jamming for that project. So reach out if you've got a rich uncle or somebody else who really wants to get into drag racing. We will do whatever we can do to help. But anyway, great time put on by everybody. Great sponsors, Pickett Custom Trucks, the National Hot Rod Diesel Association. There's so many to name. Check out their website. They come back every year, so can't wait to be out there next year. Oh, and great food. We had giant corn dogs, but there was barbecue. There was nachos in a box the size of a large pizza. So a ton of options. It was really fun. Just seeing the crowds and seeing the enthusiasm, it really made me think about doing some podcast episodes from some of the shows coming up. I know some of the other podcasters do it, and now I'm jealous. I want to do it too, and talk to more people out at the truck shows and the various jamborees and things that go on throughout the country, especially throughout the summer months. So we're definitely planning on going to a couple shows. Of course, Matt's we've got in a few weeks, but over in Louisville. But Walcott for sure is on our hit list. South Idaho Truck Show, reached out to them. There's a bunch of shows all over the place. I'd really like to get out to one of the Historical Society, the trucking, I think ATHS is one that happens out on the East Coast, maybe Pennsylvania, maybe Virginia. But there's a ton of shows across America. Get out there. It's fun. People are happy. People are enjoying being a part of trucking, which is awesome to see, feel, and be a part of. So check out the ones in your neighborhood. I mean, they've got truck parking nearby for events like this, at least the one here. Of course, the jamborees in Walcott is in July, and that's at the I-80 truck stops. Of course, there's all kinds of trucking over at their facility and nearby facilities. So, get your big rig over there if you're in the area. Keep your eye on the calendars. We'll try to share some of the links out to some of these as we're heading to them, or even if we're not heading to them, just to support them, but also give you a heads up that it's occurring. And then you can get out there and take an opportunity to swing through, get a little variety in your diet with some of these food trucks and vendors they've got, and get out, walk around a bit. It was a beautiful day down in the valley today after the rain. It was like 70 degrees and sunny, so it doesn't get much better than that before we get cooked out of here in a month or two. All right. So thanks everybody over at the truck show in Chandler, Arizona this week. Next up, let's have a little geography quiz. I posted earlier this week on Facebook, made a mention of Fick, Indiana. Have you ever been there? You won't find it in your road atlas, so I'll spare you the trip to the back in the index and looking up the F city names in Indiana. You won't find it on your GPS, and you won't find it in Google either. I did Google it just to see what might come up. If any references to it or anything else, all I found was a skateboard company in Australia. So no, you're not going to find it in any of the usual places. But there are some safety directors across America and at least one DOT officer who have heard of it. So Fick, Indiana, it isn't a real town, at least in this world. It's just a figure of one trucker's imagination that got passed down to others. I did have to describe it once to a DOT officer during a slightly uncomfortable visit to a chicken coop in Ohio. I said, you see, it's a really small town, a hamlet, really. Not to be confused with Hamlet, Indiana. It's not anywhere near there, as there is a town by that name in Indiana, which I discovered as a kid and I thought was really cute when we went through there, riding along with my stepdad. I think it's somewhere on the toll road, I explained to him. One of those service plazas. Not really a town, I guess, but I've fueled there, I'm pretty sure. I've seen it on their receipts, so it's real, Mr. Ossifer. Anyway, FIC stands for, and I'll give the PG version, Fluck if I know. Back in those days being the 90s, we were running a lot of Midwest to East Coast and back. So Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, Illinois, PA, the back and forth every week, multiple times a week, not a stretch of the imagination. And so this was all on paper logs, of course. And a lot of what we were doing at that time, you couldn't really show it in a logbook accurately and show that off to anybody, safety director, DOT officer, you name it. It wasn't really going to work out. It didn't all fit. So there was an old timer back then. We'll just call him the legend. And he told me once, just use FIC. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, FIC Indiana, just use FIC Indiana. And he explained, of course, it means flock if I know. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? There, old timer. So he explained to me what to do. So, back in it was a hassle to manage 2, 3 logbooks, and even, loose leaf logs, like Cindy mentioned the other day. That was a miracle invention. Thank God for that. It really saved our fingernails from having to pull out all these staples and put them back in. It was really a great advancement in the technology for the transportation industry at the time. Just be able to pop in, grab 30 new loose leaf pages, and just start wherever you felt like starting the story again. So the way you would use FIC Indiana, and I'm trying to remember it exactly because I'm sure it was a little more nuanced than what I'm going to describe, but basically what the legend told me was, just instead of trying to keep all these trips from end to end from the Midwest back to the East Coast, just have 2 logbooks that relay the loads out to another driver in FIC Indiana. And you would basically have your western half logbook and your eastern half logbook. When you crossed over from FIC Indiana, you would just jump on your other logbook. And so I suppose you could probably do this with any town. You didn't need to make up a town. It's a little more fun when you make up the town. Plus, it also gave you some flexibility depending on how your hours were playing out, because FIC Indiana really didn't work. And if you needed to move the line over, 100 miles to the east because that's all the hours you had left, or you didn't want to have to rewrite a whole logbook page just to get another hour back, or rewrite 3 pages to get an hour back, as sometimes would be the case. If you wanted to keep it somewhat math worthy, if the DOT officer ever got a hold of it, you just use FIC Indiana and you just baffle them with your good personality. At that time, there wasn't any way to look things up with Google. He had basically the same tools you had. He had PC Miler, the little database of towns if they wanted to do calculations. There was no Google for them to call your bluff. And so the one time my bluff did get called, he was kind of baffled and stumped at the whole thing and said, whatever, and just get out of here. But anyway, we'd use FIC Indiana and just continue to relay loads all day long in FIC Indiana. Depending on which side of it I was on, my logbook never showed I left that side of either the west side of FIC Indiana or the right side of FIC Indiana, and on the show went. The other person who had to know what FIC Indiana was, and I would expect him to at least scratch his head. Maybe he just knew what we were up to and he just didn't care, was our safety director at the time. It didn't take a genius to figure out there's probably some missing fuel receipts in here, some toll receipts. Now, we did know at the time where to go to get the date not filled in or filled in on the date you would prefer it to get filled in at the fuel desk, and it wasn't just pre-printed, pick your stop, Mauston, Wisconsin, various quick trips at the time, the quick trip in the Midwest type of quick trip. There were ways to at least get in the ballpark for a safety director, or you needed to be able to show some level of fuel receipt at times to an officer or two. He didn't figure it out or he didn't care, but either way, sir, we appreciated you. We got a lot of things done back in those days, and without a lot of hassle in reconciling what it was that we had done. Also, we accomplished it safely at the end of the day, so that helps in people not asking a lot of questions that you really not have to like to answer. So maybe you've been to Fick, Indiana or somewhere useful. If you have, share that with us out on the Facebook page or send us a message, make a comment in the YouTube channels or the various videos. And so at least now, if there's ever a trivia question on the podcast that asks you about Fick, Indiana, you'll have some of the answers. So next up, let's talk a little bit about Batman. And I like Batman movies, not all of them. I like The Dark Knight. The Joker was brilliant. R.I.P. to Heath Ledger, and that performance was phenomenal. When I had this thought earlier, I was thinking about Batman earlier this week, and then I went back and watched The Dark Knight because I wanted to make sure my memory and my perception of what I think I saw and think I comprehended about the movie was actually true, which was great to go revisit that movie. It's a long one, but it's a good one. The thing that got me thinking about Batman, and particularly in that movie, because of the role Batman plays as the hero and to some degree the villain, got me thinking about trucking. And one thing that's come up, and I've heard it quite a bit over the last few years, and it's come up several times in my discussions, especially with people, because I'm having more conversations due to the podcast over the last month or two. And that theme is there's a longing for that period of time during COVID where people acknowledged truckers and by association the people of the supply chain as heroes. And that feeling, of course, has dissipated to some degree as we have toilet paper and paper towels and other things. But during that time, everybody was feeling the pain of a broken supply chain. And that made them acutely aware of how much they need you. When you see an empty spot on a store shelf or a bin in a factory that doesn't have anything in it, you find out real fast how important truckers are to your life. We all know this, right? We joke about it sometimes. We threaten it amongst ourselves sometimes, or on the CB radio or Facebook or wherever. Do they really know how much they need us? Like how bad it's going to get really fast if we're not there. But of course, the store's filled back up. The toilet paper's in supply. No worrying about what your third, fourth, and fifth options are if you run out of toilet paper, which is a painful thought process to go through, which some folks did have to go through, at least think through it. Like, what are we going to do next? Like, we got two rolls left and Costco is out. And we don't know when there's coming back, and we don't know if, even if they bring another truckload, by the time I get to the store, is there going to be any there? But of course, that time passed. We filled the stores back up. And that's what got me thinking about Batman, right? Batman is a hero. He fights the criminals of Gotham City. And then at a certain point, and I'm no Batman expert, but in The Dark Knight, it plays out where people start to forget about his hero nature and they start to gripe about Batman. And they're like, maybe he should just leave it to the police. And even when the police are like, listen, Batman can do stuff we can't do. Like, we don't have magical suits and armor and a bunch of geniuses behind the scenes making fancy equipment for us. Batman doesn't have to necessarily play by the rules. He can go grab somebody in China and bring him back to the United States without talking to the government. He just snatches him out of a building with a wild scheme and Alfred figuring out how to accomplish it. But even regardless of all that, people turned on Batman. People critiqued Batman, they cried and they whined about Batman. He was making things worse. Why can't he just leave everything alone? And that's kind of the point of Batman, that he doesn't have to play by the rules and can accomplish the mission of fighting crime, which is a good thing, but it can come with consequences or some aggravation or just mild irritation, Imagine the stuff that they didn't show in the movie, which is, Batman wreaking havoc all over town chasing criminals, and who's going to pay to clean it up? Who's going to pay the damages? Who's going to fix the cars that he broke as he was screaming down the street or dodging missiles from the Joker? The person who does the hard thing, the thing that no one else can do or seemingly will do. They're happy when he does it, but it's in the public's nature, it's in human nature to forget that you need it. And that's truckers as well. When you're really great at it, and when Batman is perfect, you don't even know Batman's there. The criminal disappears, gets snatched up, lands on the police doorstep, and they take him away, and there was no damage, and there was no carnage, and everyone's thrilled. And the better he does it, the less they even know to be grateful for it. And it's kind of like what truck drivers do. All across America, every single day, we deliver what this country needs and what they want, and we do it so well that they never notice that we're there. Now, they may notice it on the commute. More and more people don't commute. They work from home. And so they notice us even less in the negative ways because they're not out on the road. They just see the magic appear, right? The chain of events, the chain of trucks that go from bringing something off of a boat in a port somewhere, and all the different trucks that are involved in all of getting that to some factory somewhere, to their workplace somewhere, to their home somewhere, happens so well that they're not in need of us in their minds like it was when the toilet paper was missing. So they don't notice us except when we're in their way now. But you are no less the heroes on these days than you were before, when you're not being recognized for the heroes that you really are. In the 70s, truckers were heroes, idolized in songs and on TV. And just like those heroes, there are other heroes that get celebrated on their various days. Soldiers, veterans. Yesterday was International Women's Day. So women, mothers, fathers, there's all kinds of days to celebrate and try to remember our heroes. Labor Day, Veterans Day, the 4th of July, Memorial Day. And on those days, the public remembers the heroes. And just like for us, a lot of times that adulation disappears after the day goes by. But I want you to think about it like this for a moment. It's in those times when the adulation has faded away into the background, just like it is right now, that you're even more of a hero. You're being the thing that they need more than a hero. You're being unassuming and unsung, and you're doing it on the days when no one cheers you, without fanfare, against every headwind imaginable. This week, it was snowstorms in many parts of America. Other days, every day, it's crazy drivers. Truck drivers, four-wheelers, motorcycles, mopeds. You deal with it all the time. Some days, it's kidney stones. And for many people, it's more than kidney stones. There are more battles going on in the cab of a truck than people acknowledge and think about. But you're doing your job. So the point of all this, what I wanted to say was be proud of yourselves and all that you do. And be even more proud, not less proud, on the days when it's more difficult, when your professionalism and alertness save lives, on when you being in the right place that nobody around you even understands why it's the right place to be, at the right distance to be, and moving a lane earlier because you were looking a mile down the road and not 500 feet down the road like the four-wheelers around you. When that saves lives, or even prevents the need to save a life because you already did your job so well, nobody even noticed that it was being done well. Let's forgive them for not understanding how hard this job really is, because they have no way to comprehend it, having never been in the seat. And like we talked about and joked about a little bit last week, about 46% of people would be a truck driver if they thought they could make a little more money. And I disputed that theory, this makes you remember all the more how little they know about how hard the job really is. They can't know. It's not their fault that they don't know. And partly it's kind of our fault for making it look so darn easy. You need to remind each other, everywhere that you are more than heroes. Hold each other up, congratulate each other, be there for each other to lean against on the days when you are strong, and be willing to lean on one of the rest of us when you aren't. And during Driver Appreciation Week, we shout it loud and proud, along with everyone who supports us, the people who load the trucks, dispatches the loads, write the checks, opens up the trip envelopes, all the things that go on behind the scenes, behind the wheel. Be proud of yourselves. Be proud of each other. It's a hell of a thing that we accomplish every day of every year for our collective American dream. Let me put my soapbox down for a minute. We'll slip that in the side compartment. Pre-trip is complete. Let's push the buttons in and get this rig rolling. Let me give a quick endorsement to my friends over at True TMS. If you're a small fleet, especially if you're in the tanker business, they make a TMS, transportation management system. Keep track of all your loads, your billing, driver app to send load information, collect documents, all the good stuff that comes with a TMS. If you're looking for a TMS, consider giving a look to True TMS. I've known some folks over there for a long time before there was even a True TMS. They know trucking. They care about trucking and the trucking industry. You'll see them at some of the shows. George goes out to the Trucker Jamboree. They care about our business, and they're interested in selling a product that makes a difference to people. So give them a look, www.truetms.com. So check them out if that's a good fit for you.
I didn't get to say goodbye, never got the chance to lie and say that I would change my ways for good. 'Cause this ain't for the faint of heart, babe, to tell the truth that probably never was. 'Cause I'm easy to like, babe, but I'm hard to love.
Welcome back, everybody. I slipped in a little portion of a song there, a song by a friend of mine, Shane Britt, and it's from his song, The Faint of Heart. He lives in Arizona. He's a musician. I ran into these guys a few years back. They were doing opening act for a really great artist and a guy who's got a lot of trucking songs, Chris Knight, if you've ever heard of him. But anyway, Shane, TJ, and their band, the Coltrane's, were opening up for Chris Knight, who came to Arizona, his one and only trip to Arizona so far. And they were great. They were awesome. Got me digging into their music. We've messaged back and forth over the years and more recently. And so he's had this song out for a while. I didn't notice this song before, but he just released a new album, and this song he had put on the album as well, which caught my attention and got me listening to it. And I really loved it there. I grabbed a verse that I thought was really poignant about relationships, and the song really touched, for me, on some tender spots and the realities of relationships in trucking. Relationships are tough even when you don't have a truck in the mix. With a truck, it gets tougher for everyone involved. Sure, technology has changed some things for the better, but other things may be more complicated because of the technology. You know, back in the day, there wasn't a reasonable expectation or a realistic desire to have hourly, daily contact with people. We called in to our significant others, friends, family, once every couple of days at times. Some of it was just practical, like it's just not reasonable to think that you're always going to be in a spot where you've got a phone or got to have access to a phone or a payphone. Some of it's just the reality of being tired and beat up, and there may be only limited amount of phones, and you went in to make a call, but the phone bank was full, and there's 5 other people waiting in line to get at one of the phones, and you're just like, I don't have it in me to make this phone call. And sometimes you endured it because you knew that it meant something to the person on the other end of the line, and that was just part of the sacrifice you had to make to keep that relationship together. But getting back to the point, it just wasn't expected. So now, yeah, it may be easier to communicate, but it's definitely changed the expectations, and that can make it tough too. I don't know which one's easier or harder. I mean, I know there were days when it was a beautiful thing to not talk to anybody for a day, unless you wanted to and made that effort to talk to them. Nobody was calling you in the cab. There was no alerts going off, nothing beeped, nothing vibrated. Well, the whole truck vibrated, but that's another story. But anyway, I think relationship-wise, I don't know if it's improved the situation or not, but I would guess that the results probably aren't any different now than they were then. And a lot of us in the trucking industry, we know breakups and we know divorces pretty well. Whether it's being a kid and trucking's in your family, a lot of times there were divorces, breakups, and even if those things didn't happen, there was strain and tension on relationships. There was strain and tension on your relationships with your trucking father, mother, whatever the case might be. Just the absence, the longing, the awkwardness of a person who wasn't there for a week or 2 weeks or more, now all of a sudden being back in the mix in a family for a short period of time, and then wham, they're gone again. And the adaptation that the family has to go through as a kid, as a spouse, whatever the case might be. But no matter what, of all of the prices that we pay in this business that don't show up on a rate confirmation sheet, on a settlement, or on a paycheck, the price that everyone involved in this business pays in a relationship might be the highest undocumented price of all. And this song got me thinking about those things. And a great song touches you somewhere and makes you think about things, at least to me. And so this is a great song by Shane Britt. So check it out. Listen to the whole thing. He's got a bunch of other really good songs too. But give it a listen when you get a minute. I've got the link posted up there on Facebook. You can grab it on YouTube, other places. On a related note of things that have a cost but don't show up on an invoice or a piece of paper somewhere, let's talk about I guess we're going to call it the GOAT Act, the GOT Act, the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act, brought forth both in the House and Congress by Representatives Mark Takano, a Democrat from California, in Southern California there, Riverside to Indio is kind of his district. We've got Jeff Van Drew, also in the House of Representatives. He's a Republican from New Jersey, far South Jersey, Atlantic City, kind of that southern tip with the beaches, and over to the western side of Jersey, over to Philadelphia. Then on the senator side, it was brought forth in the Senate by Alex Padilla, California Democrat, hails out of the San Fernando Valley, and Ed Markey, Democrat, Massachusetts. This one's going to stir the pot a little bit. And, we've got 3 Democrats in this thing, 1 Republican from South Jersey, so, not the most blazing red part of the country, but a Republican nonetheless. The ATA has weighed in. Of course, the publications, Landline, FreightWaves, OOIDA, the list goes on. All the heavy hitters in the transportation, let's say microphone business, the people who have big voices, have weighed in on it. So what's it all about, right? And let's be clear on a couple things. I'm no lawyer. I'm no politician. I'm a trucker who ended up bankrupt 20 years ago in trucking, fought back, went to college for a while trying to figure out what it was that I didn't know that made me go bankrupt in the first place. I ended up with a degree in philosophy, so all that proves that I don't know a thing more than any of the rest of you. I'm not going to solve this question, but we can talk a little bit about it and get some thoughts on the table. Distill down the GOAT Act, Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act basically removes the exemption, or attempts to remove the exemption, that keeps truck drivers from being guaranteed overtime pay like most other workers in America. The exemption for truckers has been around a long time, since the 30s, I believe, or 1938 perhaps, when it was brought into effect. Of course, about the time when truckers got going and everyone figured out, man, we really don't want to pay these guys overtime, do we? Like, that's going to cost a lot. Some variation of this bill has been floated a number of times before in both the House and the Senate. It's never made it to the floor of either one of those for a vote before. So in the past, and perhaps again now, it's a political jab, barb, tool, talking point thrown out there to stir the pot. But there is something fundamentally wrong with telling a group of Americans, in this case truckers, that you don't have the same rights as other people. Now, I don't know if this is even a good idea. Is overtime the answer to this? There's a ton of different debates that need to go on to figure out what the right answer might be. We all know there's going to be economic costs and benefits of all the various options you might choose. If every trucker in America makes more money, the cost of goods are going up. That's just an economic reality, unless something else drastic changes, because that number would be big if drivers were to get overtime. Now, that may mean that driver wages on an hourly rate might not be what we think they're worth, or maybe they would be. We'd have to figure a lot of it out, right? It's a complicated matter. There would be a lot of things that would have to be figured out along the way to make this viable and serious, which may be why it never makes it very farther than this kind of discussion that's good at stirring up the pot a little bit. But we have a serious problem in this country, and in other countries as well. I've been doing some research on how rampant the problem is in other countries. And the problem that I'm talking about here is the fact that truckers' time gets wasted on a ridiculous level all day, every day, all across this country. And the people who are causing this waste of time don't seem to have to be held to account for it. Loading time, unloading time, not honoring appointment times, penalizing us when we don't show up on time. All of that time basically wasted with impunity, and our time means our lives. It means our economic opportunities that are gone from someone who wasted our time. Sure, sometimes we get detention pay. If you follow 100 arbitrary rules and fill out all kinds of paperwork and jump through a bunch of hoops, lots of times truckers, owner-operators especially, and I've worked in a number of fleets and worked with hundreds of fleets who acknowledge that there's much of the time they don't even try to collect the reasonable detention that's owed, even if they're paying it out to their drivers or owner-operators, knowing that their shipper, the broker, whoever, isn't going to pay it. They're going to make them jump through a bunch of hoops to try to attempt to get paid. And all that time and energy will be wasted along with the original energy wasted with no remuneration whatsoever. And so a lot of times the companies just forego the whole process and say, the heck with it. And it's not right. What other business would get away with this sort of thing without some sort of market force interjecting itself to create a consequence that started to alter people's behavior? And I don't want to hear the companies squeal or the government squeal saying it's complicated and how would we track it and so forth. We as truckers and trucking companies and shippers all said the same thing about ELDs. All the exceptions and small nuances to trucking that aren't going to be accounted for in these devices. How do you want us to handle all those things in your new ELD regulations and devices? What the government threw at us was vague rules, mysterious, incomprehensible ramblings about things like personal conveyance, and then said, just figure it out. Now, like I said, I don't know if this bill is the answer, or maybe it can lead to a discussion that culminates in a better answer. But this issue of truckers being exempt from a benefit most other Americans have shouldn't be swept under the rug as easily as some folks are suggesting. My suggestion to them is figure it out. Figure out how to make this fair and equitable to the people whose time and lives are being wasted away with impunity. All right, I don't know how the soapbox got back out. I thought I locked it in the side compartment, but it snuck back out. I'll jump off it now and move on to the next topic. As we've learned in this episode, there's a lot of prickly things in the trucking industry. One prickly thing I didn't expect was kidney stones. Now I'll spare you the worst of the details, but my first kidney stone was back in the late 90s. I was in my 20s. I was out on the road. I happened to be in the northern suburbs of Minneapolis at the time, and it hit me. And it hits you. When it hits you, it hits you. Okay. I thought at the time, medical expert that I am, I thought maybe my appendix was about to rupture. And so I knew kind of where we were. I knew I could think of a Menards that was nearby, which is, if you're not from the Midwest, Menards is basically like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, right? A lumber yard, one of those big giant stores with all kinds of tools and lumber and every other thing you need for your house. So I pulled into the Menards. I can picture where I was parked, and I called 911 from my bag cell phone at the time. And there was part of me that was thinking about, well, what's going to happen to my truck? Like, I don't know what's about to happen. But the reality is, whether it's a kidney stone or something else, when you're in a certain amount of pain, kind of all the other stuff disappears. And you're just worried about, how do I make the pain stop? Okay. So, and thankfully, God bless the people at Menards. I got to the hospital. I got back. The truck was still there. They didn't tow it off. So many thanks to Menards to this day for not making a situation that wasn't going well any worse. So kudos to them. So anyway, I called 911. I mean, how else are you going to get to the hospital, right? I'm not taking a 53-foot trailer and wandering around town based on a road atlas level map and trying to figure out where the heck a hospital is. Anyway, it was painful as heck to drive. There was no reason for me to be driving, so I called 911. So I'm sitting there waiting for the ambulance to show up, and I hear the sirens. All right, a couple minutes later, sweet, we got a chance for somebody who knows what they're doing to help alleviate the situation, or at least feel comfortable knowing that an expert is around in case something goes south. When I look back out the driver's doors, I'm sitting on the seat with the driver door open, I see 3 fire trucks appear. So they roll up on me. The one guy jumps out with his helmet on and goes, "Did you call 911?" And I said, "Yes." "What are you going to do about it?" And he said, "Nothing. We just get called out for everything." So I said, "Great. Will the ambulance be here soon?" He's like, "Yeah, they'll get here soon." And then he went and got back in his truck. And I continued to sit and wait for the ambulance to show up. The ambulance comes. They grab me. They take me to the hospital. They roll me in. The couple nurses are there. I'm describing the pain to them. I'm going to the bathroom a lot, and nothing's coming out. I've got pain down low on my side. Maybe it's my appendix. And she looks at me, slight smirk on her face, and asks me, "Are you pregnant?" And I give her my best, "Are you nuts? Look, I mean, this is the 90s, right? It's not 2023 yet. We don't have a big debate about whether men can get pregnant going on back in 1997, 8, whatever it was." And so I said, "No." And she chuckled and said, "Well, your appendix is on the other side. And if you're not pregnant, then you have a kidney stone." Great, whatever that means. I'm 20 something at the time. Like, I don't even know what a kidney stone is. So they roll me in, have a CT scan. Sure enough, there he was on the screen, a little white fleck. There's your kidney stone. They gave me some pills, said don't drive, blah, 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 pain pills, and sent me on my way. Now, I've had a few kidney stones. over the last 20 some years, I guess 30, yeah, 20 some years. Let's not count this up too fast. Um, I hope you never do. At least I wasn't pregnant. Thank God for that. And I'm certain there are worse things than a kidney stone. I really don't want to find out what those things are. So if you're going through kidney stones, something worse, my prayers are with you because, wow, that's a lot to be going through. I've got a couple more stories around the kidney stone I'll share later. The It's like stories about how my appendix didn't turn out to be on the other side like she had thought. It turned out later, several years later, when I had my appendix removed, that it was on the normal side. Or it was on the not normal side of my body, which evidently is a thing, when I had it removed. Which we found out when I thought I was having another kidney stone. And they found out that actually on that side, my appendix was there. And we can talk a little bit about the scam that is the medical industry that I first discovered during this first adventure with a kidney stone. Of course, early 20s, late 90s, owner operator. I didn't have insurance. Imagine that. And so I got to have some interesting debates with the various medical companies involved in this journey, from the fire department to the ambulance company to the hospital, and all the fun that goes along with that. But let's talk about something more fun. We're going to get into our interview with Gary here. Gary is a well articulated man from Florida who happens to be the captain of a giant articulated dump truck. So we're going to take a quick break, slip in a word from our partner, and get on to the interview with Gary. It is tax season. Truckers, you know your math doesn't math very well, especially now since ELDs got into the picture. Some of us could do a little bit of math when it came to doing our recaps and understanding how many hours we had left. We've had ELDs for a while now. Some of our math skills are rusty, so hire a professional to help you with your taxes. She's got a hazmat endorsement, and now she's licensed with the IRS to do people's taxes. She does my family's taxes, my business taxes. She understands trucking, she understands deductions and how to maximize all the advantages that the tax code allows for your business, for your personal taxes. She's affordable. She meets you where you are when it comes to cost. She's not just in it to rack up a bunch of fees. She's a great person. Reach out to Tax Mommy Jackie and get your tax work done through her.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. Hey, Gary.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. Nice to talk to you.
I'm sorry it takes forever. I'm on an Android, so you had to bear with me. You would think most people with a phone would have Zoom.
No, no worries at all. No, I've come to realize that something you don't think about when you think about the tools that I use in my job now, day to day, aren't the tools everybody else uses.
When I first started trucking, we did Zoom for your driver manager and stuff. And then once I left that company, I was like, I don't need that anymore. And then and now I did. Wish I would have kept it. Well, on the way home, I was just running through my head all the stories I might have. And I was like, I've got more stories than what I realized.
Yeah, it doesn't
Uh,
take long to gather some stories and have some adventures. I mean, just starting out, that's just an adventure in and of itself. It's one thing
yeah.
to go through training or however you got a CDL, and then it's a
Hmm.
whole nother thing when you sit in the cab and go, "Well, wait, I got to do it all
Yeah.
for real?"
Yeah. Like this is actually happening.
They come flying at you as soon as you press the buttons in, right? You're like, start thinking of all the
Oh yeah,
things you should have asked.
especially on the ELD. It's so much easier when you have someone sitting next to you, answer your every question, and then when you're actually out there, you're thrown into it. Seems like you go back, and if you had good training, it'll come back to you. But if you didn't, it's like you wish you would have asked more questions.
Yeah, and one time passing through, basically mimicking your trainer or whatever, they walk you through an exercise or however
Yeah,
they go about it.
he's done it 100 times, so you watch him. Yeah, basically, like you said, you mimic him, while he's in the truck with you, and then when you're on your own and you have everything else going on in your head, it's like, oh man, oh man.
Yeah, I used to
uh,
do that actually. This was back in 2011 probably is when I think when I started. When I got out of the truck for the last time, I took a job at PeopleNet, which is eventually got acquired by Trimble, and I was the project manager. So I go out to new trucking companies, usually small ones. I'd help teach their folks who were doing the installs how to do the installs properly and connect up all the cables when it was more complicated and there was a lot of cables to run to get the units all set up.
mhm.
Back to the various antennas and between the onboard computer and the display and all that stuff. I mean, now it's a lot of Bluetooth, so it's a lot less work. But then also it was training the drivers or train the trainer who was going to train the drivers and turn them loose. This was back before it was mandated. It was just a choice. People wanted it for tracking and messaging and all that stuff.
I was born in the '90s, so I'm used to computers and stuff. I was in school, that's what we had. Whereas when I got into trucking and all these old school guys were still talking about how they used to run the paper log. I mean, I learned it in CDL school. Well, I'm sorry, more so with the first company I went with, Stevens. They showed us like an emergency thing where if your ELD went down, you have to know how to do this. And that was like my biggest fear. I have to go back to. I was like, that would be last resort. I'll call out to someone and hey, you got to help me. Uh, my first trainer was Stevens. I actually had to call him one time because it said it was recommended I switch to paper logs. I was like, man, you got to help me out. I'm freaking out here. He's like, hold on, hold on. He said, on the top left of your screen, is it still showing it's connected to the truck? I said, yes, sir. He's like, is it showing you're driving? Yes. He said, keep on going. Because basically you'd have to redo your whole week up to that point
Right.
on paper log. And I mean, I could do it. It was just in that moment, like, hold on, let me just stop everything and get readjusted. Whereas the other guys that had came from paper logs, they'd rather do that. But then again, with ELD, they say they prefer the ELD. It made life simpler. But so there wasn't too much of a learning curve for me. It was almost a benefit that I hadn't come from paper logs.
Yeah, it was a big
So
transition for a lot of folks, and there were, I won't name names, but there were plenty of the people who were used to paper logs who their ELDs would have problems on a regular basis
yeah,
because they
yeah, yeah.
preferred to do it on the paper logs.
Procedures, it's like, when does it stop? You think you've got a handle on it, especially when you're fresh out the gate. You think you got a handle. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's go. And then next thing you know, you're leaving the Stevens hub, and instead of making a right hand turn like you're supposed to make a left, right in front of the hub, and you're like, I'm getting fired right here. This is it. As soon as I made a left, I was like, okay, I gotta get turned around. I go to make a left hand turn at the first intersection. I misjudged the turn, had to back up and readjust myself. I'm like, that's it. They're good. I'm like right outside the fence. I'm like, these guys are gonna just find me right here. And then the road I came down on after I made the left, it was under construction. I'm like, oh great, here we go. This is a great start in my trucking career. And what happened was I was so used to the trainer's GPS system on the ELD that it would speak, it would talk as it's giving directions. And so I put out of the gate there and it never said anything. I was like, oh, okay, well, it's maybe just got to catch up. It's just started the truck up and then it's just got to catch up. Well, so I make the left hand turn. I come around the yard. I finally do like a city block, make a right hand turn. It's still not talking. I get on the interstate. So this is Dallas Fort Worth area, and my GPS is not talking to me. She's just being mute. She's being antisocial with me or something. So I'm literally trying to glance at it, which I had done my pre-trip and I did my trip planning and all that. And so I had some directions wrote down, the main stuff, not exit by exit necessarily, but stay on this highway and keep going for X amount of miles. And so I'm watching my GPS there, looking for the exits. And well, you know how Dallas is, I'm sure. If you're not paying attention, you'll either pass the exit or take the wrong one. And so I'm struggling to figure out which direction I need to be headed, which road, which exit to take. and I get turned around. I'm like, okay, I'm going the wrong direction completely at this point. Once I did get on the interstate, so I found the closest exit that would get me, from what I could tell, I could do go under the interstate and do a loop, get pointing the other direction.
Mhm.
So I get, where was I headed from Dallas? I want to say I was headed to Liberal, Kansas. I had no idea how to get there. At this point, I'm just happy to be heading in the direction at all, and it seemed like the general direction. And I got my GPS where it was happy. It wasn't telling me to turn around when safe. So I got on the phone with my second trainer with Stevens. My first one was a dedicated driver for craft, and my second trainer was OTR. So I got a little bit of a mixture. It was pretty cool. And I called my second trainer. Okay, let's figure this out. What do you mean it's not talking? Is the volume up? Yeah, the volume's on. It's not talking. It's being dumb. I'm about to throw it out the window. That was before they had the tablet put in. That was still on the, what I call the leash. It was still on the cord. So what happened was the guy that had the truck before me, he was a lease operator, and he had the fancy system with the external speaker. So he had it hooked to the ELD and also to the CD. He had it, I forget how he wired it, but they both worked through the external speaker. And what happened was in the settings, they didn't have it on external speaker. And so it wouldn't talk because it was plugged in. It just wasn't done right in the settings.
Right.
So long story short, that's what happened. It wasn't set up right. And I'm having a good old rough time trying to figure out why is this thing not talking. I have to like literally stare at it when my exit comes up and trying to match the sign with what the GPS is saying, which I mean it's not bad if you're 50 miles out. Okay, I got that, no problem. I'll catch the exit. But when you're in Dallas and the exits are like within minutes of each other, had me a little shaken up there. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. This is not what I signed up for. This thing's
Yeah, I can
supposed to be
go from
talking to me.
yeah, I can go from 0 to 100 miles an hour pretty quick and the learning curve.
I'm like, none of the training got me ready for this. Like that was kind of fly by the seat of your pants kind of deal there. My nerves were pretty well shot by the end of the day. I tell you, when I first started driving solo, I was okay. When I was with my trainers, they kind of helped keep me calm and stuff and settle my nerves just because there was someone else in the truck. When I got by myself, man, I was all jittery. If I missed an exit, I thought it was the end of the world. I'm gonna be 50 miles, 50 plus miles out of the way. They're gonna call me and say, "What are you doing?" Because with the GPS, they had me leery that they could see everything I'm doing. They're gonna call me if I'm 50 miles out. Like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was a whole different ball game when I started, right? GPS was amazing when it first came out because you could see stuff like you knew how far away your exit was and stuff like that. Like even if some of the precision and the truck routing wasn't right, just knowing that your exit's 3 miles
Oh yeah,
away or 2 miles away, or that it's a left exit versus a right exit. Because if you've never been in the town before, there's no guarantee which side, and it's no easy feat to move a truck over 4 lanes of traffic in a mile to get to the
yep,
left side when you didn't know that's how they were going to set it up. And then you
everything
got
else.
weird places like Jersey or whatever that has jug handles and all kinds of weird constructs to navigate things. So yeah, the GPS was a godsend.
Yes, it was just another good tool we had.
Or
That's
even
how I
when
saw
you
it.
got lost, right? Because, back in the day, if you took a wrong turn, you might not have a map that is anywhere near the detail
You're on
that was
your
going
own
to
pretty
tell
much.
you. Yeah, like you might go, you know what? Because I mean, it's not like you can't just swing into a Dairy Queen parking lot and whip a U and go back out the other direction. Like you got to have enough room to do
Yes,
whatever it is that you want to do, and you don't know just because I make a left here that there's any
hmm
other left-hand turns down that road that are
yes.
going to get me back. Like you don't know what you're getting into. You may find yourself
That
6 miles in the wrong direction at a dead-end road for all you know.
the first time I went to Detroit, that's what I had to deal with. Where you just explained, I was going to this creamery, first time I'd been there, and I was on the phone with dispatch, and he was trying to coach me how to. It's gonna be on your right. You'll see it's the school bus yard. It's gonna be on your right, right after that school bus yard. Okay, so I'm thinking it's quarter mile, maybe a little 3/4 of a mile after. No, it's literally the next driveway, and it's tight. He said it's tight. I blew right by it. I saw the school buses. I thought, oh, there it went. There went the driveway. Oh, great. And it's early in the morning. No one was there. So instead of trying to get turned around, because I'm instantly my mind's going 100 miles an hour. How do I get this truck turned around here in Detroit? You've got very limited space there already. Everything's tight. The road was under construction. I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? And so I pulled
Yeah.
into the parking area where the employees park, and then they start coming in with all their cars. And I'm like slowly, I'm like, this is a train wreck. These cars are coming in, and the guy's like, you got to get out of here, man. The employees are coming. You got to get out of here before all the cars start piling in. So, oh my gosh, man. So I pull out, make a right because I can't make a left. The median's all tore up, and there's no way to make a left-hand turn. So I had to make a right out of there. Thankfully, the guy was nice enough to help me back up and get readjusted. And I had to get on the phone with safety, and he's telling me, please, he's telling me to stop the truck. He's like, you got to stop somewhere. I don't know where you are. He's like, my GPS can't keep up with you. I was like, what? And the further I go, I'm getting into a residential area, and now my heart's just beating. I was like, oh goodness, I'm looking at all these houses and worried about low power lines and stuff. Oh, this is not going to be good. I passed a school. That's when you know you're in trouble when you pass a school in a little neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so finally, I hit a stop sign. Okay, he's like, okay, sit there for a minute. Let me let my computer catch up with you. I was like, I was not going that fast. He said, well, there was a lot of streets, and he finally basically had me do a big square basically to get back to where I should have been. And he got me in there. And after that, I went there. I want to say at least three more times after that, and I pretty much had it nailed down. You see the school buses, hit the brakes because you're gonna pass it real quick, and it was tight. It was big enough driveway to squeeze through. You just had to really know where it was, especially at night when it's raining and stuff.
Yeah, that reminds me of like back in the day before we had a phone. We had to call 2 days before, a day before when you had a payphone, and you might, like let's say I ran a lot of Minnesota to the East Coast, and so you might as soon as you get the bill of lading and get a phone number for the receiver. Every time you stop, you're trying to call them because you got to get on a payphone and you got to call them. You got to call them when somebody's there. You had to start doing it because you might not get a hold of somebody for a day or 2 days, so you had to figure out some way to get the directions in there. We had on Atlas, and the bigger cities, you had the more detailed street maps, the Hudson guides
Mhm.
to the various cities, and you just had to figure it out. And I remember one time I used to go deliver meat down in the Hunts Point meat market in New York City, and then we'd go pick up LTL freight back to Minnesota because it paid better than straight truckloads. And so
That's crazy.
but I mean, then
That
you
they
end
just
up
had the
wandering around. You're not
right,
going like, you might have 5, 6 pickups in New York City and you have no idea where the low bridges are. Most people, like, if they're in the receiving or shipping area, like they can give you directions from the nearest interstate, but they can't tell you how to get from Queens to the Bronx. Um,
right.
the way you're going to end up coming. So I mean, it led to all kinds of adventures like that. I remember one time I got this one. It was 2 pallets. I about just said the heck with it, and didn't even go. But he gave me the directions, and I don't remember what it was. But anyway, the L train was there, so you got all these low overpasses, and the directions said go down this street and then go under the L because that's high enough for you to get under, and then take a left. And for whatever reason in my mind, I kept driving around, and I couldn't find this stupid store. And so finally, I was about just to say the hell with it and just go to Jersey and be done with my pickups. And so
Right.
anyway, I ended up stopping in the middle of the street, grabbing, hit my flashers. I ended up walking into a store, and they let me use the phone to call this guy. I was ready to kill this guy. And then he said, read the directions back to me. And so I read the directions on my notepad back to him. And then I realized that whole time when I was supposed to be making a left, I'd been making a right.
Oh,
And so I was doing it wrong. And I was going off in this red, like I had scratches from trees up and down the side of my reefer unit. And I mean, it
dang.
was just, I was ready to kill him. And then I realized I was the moron who kept making a right hand turn when so then I did exactly what he said. I was right there. He was standing there waiting for me with my 2 pallets. I'm like, good Lord.
Well, he actually did something good there where he said to read it back to him. So instead of arguing of who's right, who's wrong, let's just start from square one and figure out where we went wrong.
Yeah.
That's a good dispatcher there.
Yeah, that was the receiver guy who did that.
And it
Okay.
was a good thing, he calmed me down because he's a lot bigger than me, and it wouldn't have ended well if I'd have showed up mad. Uh,
It's funny how we would get ourselves in a pickle and we'd be all like, I'm ready to quit. I'm ready to strangle someone. And we talk for a minute or two and we figure out what we need to do to fix it. But okay, the world's not ending. We can fix this. But you get in
yeah, and I
those
mean,
moments
like,
where you just don't know what to do.
yeah, those moments, I mean, your biological responses go through the roof, like the
Yeah.
nerves and the anxiety and the fear, and you don't want to wreck something, you don't want to hurt anybody,
Yep.
you don't want to destroy somebody's parked car. Like when I was going down those residential streets in New York City, in some of the neighborhoods, you can park cars all the way around the corner. So I had to go down block upon block because the cars were parked all the way around the corner. Like you could barely make the turns with a pickup truck, let alone a semi truck. And I'm just going deeper and deeper, going, am I going to have to back up for two
Hmm.
miles between parked cars to get out of here? So,
So I know I didn't touch on it yet. I got my license back in 21. I know not that very long ago. I went to Tampa truck driving school here in Florida. That's where I picked up my CDL from. Good course, good. I couldn't have asked for better instructors. They were awesome. I trained on an automatic because I knew the company I was going to, Stevens, had automatic. So I was like, well, if I ever need to do the manual, I can always come back and redo it. And, let me just get some miles under my feet a little bit and then see how it plays out. It's quite a story how I got my CDL though. With the CDL school, you get 3 attempts to take the state exam. And after the third attempt, it'll be out of pocket. Like you have to go somewhere else other than that school and it'll be out of pocket. So the first time I failed, the main instructor was shocked. He's like, Gary, I figured you would have passed it. Like you were one of my best students. And I was like, yeah, I know. He's like, I know what happened. You got in your head. I said, yeah, I did. What happened was the alley doc just beat me up, man. I could not. I could do it all day with my eyes closed doing practice, and when it's time, someone's actually testing you on it. I didn't hit anything. It's where they had the cones on the outside, and basically I was hitting that invisible wall, and I just ran out of pull-ups. I could not. I tried one time to readjust and redo my approach to it, and I could not get it, and I was all in my head. I was like, "That's it. I'm not getting my CDL today. I don't know if I ever will." So that was the first time the 9 degree back got me. And then the second time I failed, it was I trying to think what it's called, the maneuver. It's where you pull forward and you shift your trailer over one lane to offset back. What happened was I literally pulled forward, did a little S thing, and back in the same lane. I lost where the cones was. And then after I knew I had failed, I talked to the tester, the state tester, and he's like, "You could have came to me like out done one pull up. It will only count as one pull up. Got out of the truck safely and asked me which lane do I need to be in." He said, "I can't tell you how to do it, but I could have told you which lane to be in." I was like, "Oh man, you kidding me?" And then let's see.
well, now the pressure's on, right? You got one shot
Oh yeah,
left.
oh yeah. And then in the midst of all this, it's July now, and my birthday's in July, and my license is about to lapse. And the reason I didn't renew it, like anyone else, I'm gonna pass this flying colors the first time. So I said, no, I don't need to renew my license. It'll automatically renew. And the lady at the license place was like, yeah, all that will update once you get your Class A's. You upgrade from your permit to your actual Class A. I said, all right, cool, no worries. Well, in between my second and third attempt, my birthday rolled around. So not only do I have to retake the state test, maneuvers, driving, all that, I also had to retake my permit test. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, man. Oh, I was mad. Had to be 14 days that had after I went back and took the computer test, the permit test. I took that, had to wait 14 more days to hold the permit so I could retest. So you talking about going through it, man. I was like, I don't know. Even my wife said, if you don't pass it this time, let's just give up on it. It's done. I was determined though. I was like, no, this is my one chance. I have to get it. That morning I did some praying. I did. I was like, I need some help here. If I don't get this, it's done. So I did the pre-trip, did fine with that, no problem. The I don't know if you guys had to do this or the sail test where you do the in-cab test, you pump your brakes and all that. You do your you let your buttons pop out and all that, and hold
Yeah,
the
you got to get
brakes.
the air pressure down to get the buttons to pop and all that.
That was nerve-wracking because they said it's not just knowing. Obviously, you know your controls. You go through all the wiper settings, the AC, all this, show them the horn, and then you had to get the verbiage right. They're like, that's what really gets a lot of people. They get tripped up on the words and they forget. I did the pre-trip inspection, and then I went on to do the maneuvers. Did good, and took the road test. Was this after 2 attempts? This was the third attempt. I finally got to get on the road, which I did ask for a refresher course because it had been some time in between. I was like, let me do a refresher course just to make sure I'm good on the road. And I did fine. I pulled back into the yard, and they're like, congratulations, you passed. And I laid on that horn, about let all the air out of it. They were like, congratulations, you're a trucker. Oh man. And I do remember like my head's pounding, I'm all excited, and I remember something they said. One of their students actually failed. He passed the test. He pulled the brakes, was in the yard, and he jumped off the truck instead of doing the 3 points of contact, and he failed. I was like, oh
Jeez.
my, so that's in my head. Do not do that. Do not be that guy. So yep. So that was back in 21. I drove for Stevens about 9 or 10 months. And so from there, I did some local driving, about 6 months, I guess it was. And then their insurance, they had a few accidents, and I fell in the category where I hadn't had my CDL quite 2 years yet. And it was either they cut us loose that had less than 2 years experience, or they had to pay more for the insurance for us. And they weren't going to do that. So they kept me around as long as they could. But like I said, I had when I originally got my CDL, I had the automatic restriction. And then in between going from over the road to local, I had to get that restriction took off because they had manual trucks. They had one Mac that was automatic, and that was it. And they're like, we can make this work for now, but eventually you're going to have to get that restriction off. And so I went back to the same CDL school and got the automatic restriction off, and I could drive a manual.
What do you
Well,
have to do to get that? Do you just have to retake the road test in a manual truck?
it's, it's the whole entire test again. Now you don't, I didn't have to retake my permit for a third time, just the pre-trip and everything.
Oh, okay.
Because it's different. They want to make sure you know about the shifter, basically. But thankfully, that local company I drove for, in between getting my that restriction took off, I was actually training in the truck with someone, and so I was already driving a manual just with the basically a trainer, and he would drive half the day, and then I drive the rest, and he give me pointers and stuff. And right off the bat, he showed me how to float the gears. He said, I'm going to show you how to float the gears, and I'm going to show you how to double clutch. And I learned both ways, which was great. By the time I went to take my test, though, I was used to floating the gears. And so I had to break myself for that.
Right.
Great. It just doesn't feel natural once you floated for a little bit. Like it's a whole extra step and it messes the whole thing up.
Yeah.
And
For a lot of us, the first time we ever double clutched was on our exam.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was always told that with the semi. The only time you ever use a clutch is to get it rolling. After that, get your foot away from it. You don't even need it.
Yeah.
I thought once I got my CDL or once I got the restriction off and could drive a manual, I thought, oh, I'm going to double clutch as, the rest of my career. As long as I'm driving a manual, I'll double clutch. I went out the window about halfway through the first day.
Yeah.
I was like, this is too much. That is way too much going on. It
Good
just
way to
felt more
build up your
natural.
left leg muscles, but that's about it.
I'm telling you, you get down in Miami and your leg just starts throbbing and shaking, and it's all you can do just hold it on the clutch. Like, no, I don't like this. It's a little bit different than a car clutch, that's for sure. It takes a little bit more, but I got pretty good at it. I could drive a 10 speed. That's all I've ever driven was a 10. I never got up into a 13, 15, or an 18. But actually, believe it or not, what really got me into it or interested in it, well, first my dad, he drove trucks in the 90s. I never got to see it, but I saw pictures and stuff, and so I thought I'd carry on the legacy. I found this game. It's called American Truck Simulator. You might be familiar with it. You might have heard of it. And you can do just about anything on there. You can play just as realistic as you like. And then I took it a step further and I made a virtual truck company that I have a few guys run with me. And so that started before I ever got my CDL. And it didn't make the decision for me to get it, but it's kind of like, in the background. Like I kind of learned on the game. I know you can use some of it in real world, but some of it's not as like the feel of the shifter. You're not going to feel the vibration of the engine and the shifter and the pedals and stuff's going to feel a little different. So that's kind of what I do as a hobby here and there.
Yeah, I've been meaning to try it. The only thing close to it, I spent about a month up doing a project with the ice road truckers up in Alaska, and they
Mhm.
have one of these fancy $50,000 simulators. And so I had to try it out, right? Because
Right?
I'm a trucking guy. Like, you're gonna let me play on your $50,000 fake truck? Like, absolutely.
I'll try not to
So
break it.
yeah, so I drove on it, and then they simulate the conditions from the ice roads, like bad conditions. I mean, I jackknifed it on the first hill,
Right.
because there's no feel to it. You don't feel the weight, you don't feel any of the momentum or anything around you. So,
Hmm.
like, I don't. I mean, I was like, well, that was interesting, but I don't know if I was good at this. I'm not sure how what would actually translate to driving a real truck. But yeah, interesting and fun, entertaining.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, it's come a long ways. My setup's not $50,000 by no means, but I've got probably close to 2,000 wrapped in mine between the computer and all the steering wheel, the pedals, the shifter. With the shifter, you start off with a base shifter, like I think a 6 speed, and then you get the adapter to make it like an Eaton shifter on top. That's pretty cool.
You're gonna have to send me some
Like
pictures of this setup. I gotta see this.
I can I can definitely do that. So you've actually got the range, you flip it up, you've got the splitter on the side there. And mine, I actually the newest version I've got, updating my shifter, it's actually got the Jake on the side now.
Nice.
So you're downshifting, and you pop it off and you downshift again and hit it again. It's awesome.
All right, you might have lured me in now.
I was hoping I would. Uh, no, that could definitely be something we bring up every now and then. Get those veterans that have been out trucking and just to scratch that itch a little of over the road. It's got its downfalls, but it's an open world game, so you can play however you like. Yes, you pick your loads and stuff, and you travel the interstates, but it's so you can make it so realistic. Like you can actually pull over for your 30-minute break and park the truck, go grab a snack, and come back and go trucking again. It does do a simulated 10 hour, so it'll fast forward time like you slept 10 hours and stuff. It'll tell you he'll start yawning, and then the screen goes black. Oh, I better pull over. I've done that before. It went black, and then next thing I know, I'm rolling off a mountain. Oh, not good. I hear the truck just making all kinds of bad noises. The steering wheel locks up. I can't do anything about it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, how did you get in? We got to hear the story about the articulated dump truck.
Okay, okay. So before I had my CDL, that's where I really started leaving the dead end jobs, just getting by, paying bills, and how long am I really going to stay here? I started getting construction, land development. Trying to think what year that would have been. I know I've got about 6 years before I got my CDL. I had about 5 or 6 years in it. I started helping to build their water treatment plants, is what they are. I started doing those projects around the area. And those, what I started on were 30-ton cats, 32-ish. And man, the first time I got on the job, one of the foremen was like, "I'd like to put you on one of those." I'm like, "I want nothing to do with it." It's big, looks like a monster truck. Like, I don't want nothing to do with it. It looks scary. He said, "Oh no, you're going to do all right." I started there on a roller and a tractor, and I worked my way up into a dump truck and went from there.
You sent me those pictures, and I mean, I hope my wife's not
Uh,
listening to this, because the first thing that I thought was I got to move to Florida and drive one of these things. They look like fun.
we can make that happen. I have a passenger seat. Now the one I'm in now is a 45-ton cat, and she's big. It's big. Like the tires, I have a Dodge Ram truck pickup. The tires are as tall as the roof.
Nice.
So you can imagine how that's the frame. The frame's about level with my truck, my pickup. So no, it's not one of the big earth movers that's 3 stories high. It's not quite that big, but it's a 45, and I believe the gross weight loaded is 165,000.
Wow.
So, I've made comments about that. People say, "Oh, I'm 80,000 pounds. It takes me forever to slow down. You got to be real careful." I was like, "That's cute. I'm twice the weight of you." Yeah, and what's crazy is truck is goes for what 200,000 now plus the trailer, looking about what 300,000 if you buy it brand new. Those trucks, I think they're either 500,000 or three-quarters of $1 million.
Dang, that's crazy.
And they'll let you drive. Here's the crazy thing: you don't need a CDL because they're not air brakes, and you're not driving on a public road.
So I really could just get on a plane and be driving one.
Sorry, I'm not making it any better. And the crazy thing is, you see how big they are. You're like, man, it must take a mile to turn that thing around. And so what it does when I say articulate it, the best way I can explain it, it's two separate frames, and in the center, what it does, it pivots. So it the bed and the cab are independent of each other. You can roll the bed over and the cab stays upright.
That's got to make the thing a little sketchy going around curves and
It
stuff if you got
it
weight on it, right?
uh not really. It's more
Hmm.
stable than what you would think
Huh.
because it's got big old tires, big old axles. It can get a little hairy sometimes, especially when the roads are real soft and wet from rain and stuff. The scariest part and the thing that took me the longest to figure out was how to back that crazy thing. Because you would think you're backing the trailer, but it turns right is right, left is left, and reverse because it's hydraulic. It doesn't actually
Oh,
pivot.
oh, interesting.
So you turn the wheel right and you're going right.
That'd throw your mind for a loop, right?
And what it is, when you turn the wheel, you turn the steering wheel, you're not turning your steer tires like you would in a semi. You're turning the cab. So it's all hydraulic and you turn the cab and that's what drives the bed. Pretty cool.
It is. It's. I'm just trying to process it in my head now. You're gonna have to take a video of all this.
And then on top of that, if that's not cool enough, it's six-wheel drive. Not all the time, but when you get in some really nasty stuff, it's bogs it down and stuff, it will lock in all six and she will pull. I mean, she will just dig herself to the ground if it's that bad. It's pretty cool.
This is like a
Let me
giant
think what else.
amusement park.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, oh, I'm going to drive my Tonka toy again.
Yep.
I'm trying to think what size engine it is. I know it's a cat. I believe it's a 17 liter. So, I think of the X15s. I thought those were the coolest. I love the way they sound. I love the way they perform. Love the X15. I'm like, well, that's cute. Your engine will fit inside of mine. It's crazy. But believe it or not, even though they're off-road trucks, they do take def, they do regen just like the semi, which don't I
Really?
have no idea. I have no
That's.
idea why you're off-road, you're not even on the highway, who cares? Let it blow the soot. But
Well,
I guess
I'm sure
it
we can thank some politicians for that.
they're quiet. You don't hear the jakes kick on. And what's cool is they do it automatically. It's not even on a pendulum like they used to be. When I first started driving them, the cats had a lever and it had one, two, three, and you would turn the. I'm trying to think what you. It wasn't a dial. It was like a stick, and you would turn it one, two, three, or off. Now these newer trucks, they do it automatically. You start going down a little grade, and you actually hear the stages kick in, which is nice. It's nice. I leave mine on automatic. You can turn it off. You can leave it set like on two. So as soon as you let off the throttle, it'll engage it. Or you have it on auto like I have it, and as you go down the grade, it'll kick on. I think the steepest grades we have there is, believe it or not, as flat as Florida is, where we dug and have ramps and stuff. We go between 10 and 12%. Now, I know that's pretty common, but you add the weight to it, and it's a different story. It's like, hold on, what you're how heavy? But
Right.
normally I'll keep mine about 20 miles an hour on the job site. They will get up to 34, 35, and it gets a little hairy because of the big tires. I mean, it doesn't sound that fast, but when you throw in how big the truck is and what it's able to hold, even do 30 is doing pretty good.
Right.
It's a 9-speed automatic. You just put it in drive and go. You are able to gear it down like you would a semi.
Well, buddy, it's been great talking with you. I'm glad we got to talk on the phone and not just through comments and Facebook stuff.
It's been great, man. I enjoy it and I plan on sticking with the channel. I think it's got a lot of potential. You're doing the right things. Uh, I actually appreciate what you're doing for the truckers out there. And even like people like me that were in it or out of it now, we can still share stories and have a few laughs.
Yeah, it's a part of us, right? Forever. There's
It
no
it
there's
even
no wiping it clean. It's the diesel fumes get in deep.
Yes, yes. once you get it, it gets in your blood. I mean, even me, like I'm not even on the interstates with our buddies, but I'm driving a articulated haul truck. It's a diesel. It's a big diesel. In a sense, I'm still trucking it up.
That's right. Well, all right, brother. You take care, and we'll catch up again soon.
You too, sir.
Take care, Gary. Bye.
Welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed the interview with Gary. I'll continue to post just the interviews on YouTube and on the website as well, so you can find them or share them easily. I really enjoyed talking to him, getting to meet him. Now he's also teaching me how to play American Trucking Simulator, a video game where you can pretend to drive a truck or virtually drive a truck, however you want to say that. I don't know, I'm a little bit old. I get confused easily about these things. But anyway, there's a whole setup involved. You got shift levers and dashes and steering wheels, like the whole 9 yards. There better be a horn. Gary, I don't know if I saw where the horn was, but I'm going to need an air horn for this thing. Between Gary and most likely one of my sons getting involved to help me with the technology details of figuring out how to make these video games work, they can do their part to help the old man, and I can handle the shifting and the horn honking for myself. It does make me think, like, how am I going to back up if I can't open the door and peek out the side? But I guess we'll figure out how all that works. I'll share some pictures of Gary's setup. Then I'm going to share some pictures of my setup. Somehow there's got to be a way to probably video record some of this nonsense and share it out to everybody else. You know, if you do something like that, let us know. You know, Gary's virtual trucking company. Maybe he can swing another driver or two on there, or maybe we can come, I don't know, meet up on the road with others. I don't know how this works. Should be some fun. I've seen some videos. I mean, some of the trucking groups, they show pictures of stuff, trucks flying over canyons. I don't know if that's the same game, Gary, but we'll sort it all out together. Also, at some point on the podcast, we're going to talk about some of the hobbies that everybody has in the truck, from the newfangled technologies to old fangled technologies. I know there's a lot of really cool stuff that people do in their trucks in their spare time that we can share with one another. So what's on the next episode, they ask? Well, next time I plan to talk a little bit about the theme song, the full song, not just the jingle. Plain White Rapper is the name of the song. And just so I'm clear and there's not any confusion, that would be rapper with a W. W-R-A-P-P-E-R. Not to be confused with rapper without a W. I can't rap or sing in any genre whatsoever, so I'm not a plain white hip hop rapper. The song's called Plain White Rapper, as in an officer sitting in the median in a white car that doesn't have any markings on it, something like that. That kind of plain white rapper. So you don't have to listen to me rap if you haven't heard it yet. Don't get scared off by the name. Now, it's not out of the realm of possibility that I could do a rap song one day. But for the moment, this song is not a rap song. More of a little country slash little bit of rock, a little bit of blues kind of country song, depending on the version that we released. We'll get probably an update from Danger Dave, hoping to get an interview with Tax Mommy Jackie. I know it's the 9th of March. We've got less than a month for the original tax deadline here, April 15th. Of course, some of you may extend your taxes. Don't forget to go file your extension if that is your game plan. But we'll talk to Tax Mommy Jackie, talk about things you can still do closing up this year. Also talk about if you need to make some profits disappear, some things you may be able to do as far as contributions to various tax vehicles to minimize that exposure and put your at least profits in a savings account or investment account as opposed to Uncle Sam's account. We're prepping for MATS here in a few weeks, getting out to the Mid-American Truck Show over in Louisville, Kentucky. And I've got a couple interviews in the works. We'll see what all pans out, of course, all subject to trucking schedules. This week was a mess with weather schedules. And so we'll see what pans out, and we'll get an interview or two out there for you as well. Quick reminder, like, follow, share, subscribe. There's probably some other words I'm missing on the various platforms, but go out and find us, share us, and enjoy us wherever we are. We'll continue to ramp up some of the other social media channels as we keep this rig rolling on the podcast. Thanks for listening this week. I hope you had fun this episode. I had fun. I feel like I'm coming into my own here a little bit now that we're 4 weeks, 4 episodes in. Tell us what you think. I'm by all means not the expert on some of this stuff, but I've got opinions, and I know everyone has opinions of their own too. Share them. Get them out there with us on social media. Send me a message. Email us. Share them with each other. Share them with your elected officials for sure. Don't let those people off the hook. Make sure they know how you feel about some of these various things going on in the trucking industry. There's a lot of motion in Washington, D.C. right now and around the country as people realign to a new administration. That means they're potentially monkeying with stuff that has an impact on you. So let them know what you think about it. We'll see you all next week. We've got work to do.